For your own party, honey. If you'd like to come up here, I'd like to tell you that you really do own a piece of the rock now.
Which piece?
You own a piece of the rock. Over in Magnolia Walking Park, there is a big boulder that will have this on it, and there is a tree planted in your honor. And they cleaned, don't thank me, well, I got a hold of Gene Wallace. Here's the plaque, everybody. This will be mounted on a boulder in Magnolia Walking Park, and a beautiful tree was planted. I believe it's a ginkgo.
Oh, wonderful. I donated it.
Well, now it's back to you. See, what goes around comes around, everybody. But this plaque... Okay, I will in a minute. But this is going to go on that boulder that the city, Gene Wallace, Brian Fisher from the city, he made sure that it was all set up. It's all good to go now, and he pruned another tree there. It's all beautiful. It says, Peggy Maruthur, March 8th, 1994 to December 31st, 2012, Director, District 1, Hot Springs City Board, with deep appreciation from the Park Avenue Community Association. Thank you. Thank you for...
Now, where is that rock again?
It's in Magnolia. You know where Magnolia, the walking park is back there? They put the rock there. It's a huge boulder. You can't miss it. The tree is planted there already. They have the measurements. This will go on there. As soon as we can get together, if you'd like to have a little ceremony, take pictures, and et cetera, et cetera. So maybe we could draft away. But we wanted to know how much we appreciate all the work we've done and everything you tried to help us. We appreciate it. Do you have a little speech?
Oh, I just want to do it. I've never done a review of what I've done, ever. So I'm going to do it.
Do you want a mic or do you want...
Yeah, well, I don't know. Can everybody hear me? No? Okay, I need a mic.
If I can get it on. And this is the card.
Well, get it upside down. It must be for right-handed people. Well, let me see. Can everybody hear me? I think I'm going to have to hold it. Yeah. Okay, there. Is it on? Can everyone hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. It's been my pleasure to serve you. That's what it's all about. And by the way, I do shake hands. I do. I always have. And it was part of what I was doing all these years. And that was empowering you to do something for your neighborhood and the community. And without the help of the neighborhoods, I couldn't do anything. It wasn't the city board. The city board eventually, I wore them down and got them to approve things. Most of the things that were approved looked like they were negative at the time because I had to kill a lot of projects to get things done for you. Adolph knows that with the stone wall behind Bohemia. That was a result of a terrible project that was proposed in, I don't know, 19-something. And that had to do with a 1 mile, 30-foot diameter hole that they were going to pierce through West Mountain. And that was the Corps of Engineers. And I was approached at Grady's Grill, that used to be the Dutch Treat, that is now the Majestic and abandoned. And I was told by Congressman Dickey, honey, just give it a rest. It's a done deal. We're going to start drilling in 4 days. And I said, is there a public meeting? And he said, well, yeah. And Helen Seeley promptly told me, it's a done deal. Get over it. So I went to the public meeting, and we defeated it 7-0. And all the money that was approved through Congress, not local, but Congress, was appropriated to Park Avenue and Whittington. It had to do with the inlets, with the infrastructure, and we did the Magnolia Walking Park. We reconstructed the entire creek as much money as we could. We did Arbor Street. We did everything that we could do. And it was all for you, because that is what it's all about. When you leave this country, they do not care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, what color you are, what religion you are. They don't care if you're from the north, south, the east, or the west. You are an American, and you are a target. If they don't like you, they're going to treat you all the same. And you've got to remember that when you are in public service, in office. Remember that every day when you go into a business, because that's what it's all about. During my tenure, which I believe broke a record of some kind, I was elected March 8th, 1994, and I believe, I'm not positive, but I believe I'm the longest consecutively elected public official with the city of Hot Springs under the old form of government and the new form of government. There was the mayoral form, and that there was a lawsuit, and the guy over there, Mr. Q. Byramhurst, was the one that lodged the lawsuit, and it created a new position, and Mr. John Barron will remember that, and it threw the city in turmoil. But it created an opportunity for us to have more of a voice. So with that voice, I gained a move of the old police station. The public voted for the tax, but for some reason they didn't begin the building of the police station. So I've got the only video of it, and I will share that with the police department and the fire department. We got 2 or 3 fire departments filled, the Civic Center, and there's a plaque on each one, and it's kind of prophetic because it says Peggy Maruthur. And I didn't use Maruthur back in those days, but you can check the plaque. Okay, I worked with the architect to redesign both the Civic Center. It was going to look like a swimming pool board. And I've got the sweatshirt. Everything I tell you, there is documentation, and my house will substantiate that. It's all over my house. So there's a sweatshirt that shows the original design, and Trice Ellis, who's no longer with us, we changed the entire front focus of the Civic Center. We also, well, no, I did. The parking deck downtown that was designed by Mr. David French, that was changed. That was supposed to be kind of a blonde color and completely different facade. And I wanted it to fit in with downtown. There was no opposition, no one cared. They thought it was stupid. And it has a twofold purpose. It's to congressman or senator, I don't remember what he was, but he was a friend of J. Dickey's. And he lobbied to get us the money for the parking deck. And the parking deck is supposed to be twofold. This is to help prop up the mountain, the one they were going to drill a hole through that would have come tumbling down. And we did have a rock slide. And the other purpose is to provide parking for downtown. What is that, Debbie?
Just watch that little thing there.
I won't do it.
No, okay, good girl.
Yeah. Okay, these are the things that I've done. A lot of them look like minutia, but when they were introduced, they made a big impact to City Hall. We used to have papers in our board packet, Mr. Watkins, that were all different sizes. And the guys that I worked with thought it was silly, so they always approved everything I did. She's going to standardize the papers. Well, I did. And I've got the original papers, and I'm going to donate it to City Hall, because I'm tired of keeping it all at home. But I did save it, and now we've got one size paper. And I also recycled before recycling was really popular, and I returned every single packet to City Hall with my name on it. Okay, I served on the selection committee for our new city manager, and that was in 1994. And I don't think I can be kicked out of office now, can I? Well, we presented a united front, but everything I picked up about him was true. You can read something into that, but I don't think they can do anything to me about that, because that is executive session privilege. Okay, actively participated in the downtown revitalization organization. I wrote this a little while ago. I believe that has to do with some of the different projects that we had downtown. And I'm presently redeveloping, I think, a loft. I'm not sure. It's going to be either office or a loft. I did initiate the entire lighting program, water replacement, sewer replacement program. It was put on the back burner, and the impact was really to the older parts of the city. It wasn't about Park and Whittington. It was about everywhere in the city. When we had an ice storm in 2000, and a water main broke, they found artifacts from 18-something in that water main. The water main was at Reserve and Central. That's critical to downtown. And it was still there. If they hadn't broken, it might not still be replaced. Okay. I began, under Mayor Seelig, I approached her about a forum in which any and all emergency responders would meet. And she said, what are you talking about? I said, well, when do the police chief and the sheriff meet? And she said, well, they don't. So I went to the police chief and to the sheriff, made the rounds, found that there was no forum in which any of our emergency responders ever met. So I began with the blessing of Mayor Seelig, and she was a pleasure to work with, even though we didn't see eye to eye. When it came to issues and the things that substantiated them, we were on the same page. We just had a different mission. And so she allowed me to start the Disaster and Emergency Program, which evolved into the LEPC, which is a state-sanctioned organization, and that's the Local Emergency Planning Committee. And by state law, I'm second in charge. So, well, anyway, I abandoned that because I'm not an emergency responder. But I was there to tell them what to do in the ice storm, and took pictures of them leaving the city and the facility and you at midnight. Joyce Sanders did not speak to me for a few months, but she thanked me after that, because what had happened is they didn't have it properly staffed, and after working a day or two over there, they got tired. Well, they should have had a backup, and we're good friends. I sat on the comprehensive planning program, and that document didn't just sit on the shelf. We implemented it, unlike the last one. I was a charter member of the MPO. I believe PACA is familiar with that. They're doing the walkability study. Diane Morrison is wonderful. We had a person before her. She was not wonderful. But Diane is wonderful. She's a hard worker. She's smart, and she implements everything. And she
good ideas.
She has wonderful ideas. And I also designed a program that would transform all the older neighborhoods. It's called The City as a Subdivision. That's my very last project, and that would emulate a subdivision with limited egress and ingress, and it would place berms. In other words, people were beginning to move to the subdivisions, what they call the first-tier subdivisions in the 70s, because there was a sense of security. Well, there is no security anywhere, but there is a perception that there is security. So we started seeing the people that had lake homes for the weekend move to the lake and abandon the city. No matter what anybody in the city says, we lost 1.9% of our population in the 2010 census, and the city, the county enjoyed 9.0 growth. Now that's not good. We got to stop that. In fact, I've got somebody here that was forced out of the city and moved to the county and was chastised because he moved to the county. And he's back there too. The only trip that I took on the taxpayer's dollar was when I flew out to Washington to renegotiate the terms of the lease for the bathhouse row, for the bathhouses. If people were wondering why they weren't being leased, it was because if you leased the bathhouse, thank you, if you leased the bathhouse and you invested $300,000, $400,000, or $1 million, you were not guaranteed more than a couple of years, 2, 3, maybe 4 years. I don't remember. I'm not really a numbers person, but it was not cost effective. It was very high risk. They could just not renew your lease. So we went to Washington, simply stayed overnight, and now you can get a 99-year lease, I believe. So that's why people are investing in the bathhouses. Okay. A guy named Paul Susky. He was the city attorney for North Little Rock. He came to the Transportation Plaza, and he gave us a wonderful presentation, like a lot of people do. And he had transformed an area called Argenta. It's on the news quite often now. And this place was in terrible shape. There were boarded up buildings. It was urban blight. It was terrible. And passive waste, if anybody knows what that is. And it was very, very dangerous. It made a lot of headlines in the news. And he transformed this area with a method that was used in law, and it's called, let's see, what is it called? Well, it's civil action for drug or inappropriate activities instead of criminal action, and it lowered the bar, and it opened an entire purview for people to not profile, but get the stats down to where you met a certain standard. If you went criminal, you had to prove criminal activities. If something was just a nuisance, you could, after you met a certain criteria, get it boarded up. You could do a lot of things. It just met a different standard. And after the presentation, I thought everybody would jump on it, but like a lot of presentations, it was ignored. So I invited Paul Husky and his then chief of police from North Little Rock to Hot Springs, and the city board adopted the nuisance abatement ordinance. And it has really changed our lives, the lives of Jonestown and many of the older neighborhoods. And District 6 has implemented it too. Everyone wants it, just like the CDBG. Okay, we also converted to energy efficiency years before the economic crisis. I tried to get them to change the vehicles for the city. They didn't listen. And I've got it on many, many different meetings. They kind of laughed about it, and I didn't care. It's never been about me. It was getting the job done. I didn't care who took the credit, because that's not what it's about. And whoever does have my position, sits in that chair, they have a job to do for the people. Anybody can sit in a chair and be a board director, but you've got to get a job done. You've got to return those telephone calls. Anyone in this room who's called me, I don't have a lie detector test with me, but I'll guarantee you I returned your call, and promptly. It's on my answering machine, and I return your call. And you can call me day or night. I'm not going to answer it at night because I can't hear it, but I will call. I lobbied to get your early warning system. They laughed about that too, but we got it because they thought it was unimportant. Anything that the city board thought was unimportant was passed through. I loved it. This was, previous boards. We have a little different composition now. So I got the early warning system, and it went bad, and we just oh, did we replace it? We didn't, no, they didn't. No, they didn't replace it, but we're gonna get it, we're gonna get it back. And I also worked with Entergy to get those little aluminum tags on your light poles. We still do not have anybody from the power company that checks those light poles. So if you see a light that is out, please report it. It'll say SL, and it's only got 4 numbers. And I thank Mike Bush for that. He was our mayor before. Gave me a lot of trouble, but he did get that done. Okay. I did move the gas regulator on Glade and Amber. That was, again, out of the FEMA funds that were left over from the Corps of Engineers. The metal detector at City Hall. I'm so thrilled to have David Watkins as our city manager. One of the first things that he noticed was a lack of security down at City Hall. And I had, I would say, monthly conversations with our past city manager, Kent Myers, about this. He said, this isn't New York City. Well, there's nuts all over. You don't have to be in New York City. And I've always been concerned about security because you don't know when somebody's going to have a meltdown or be upset about being fired or whatever. You see it on the news every day. So I wanted to make sure that he was safe, and Kent Myers was the one at risk. Our meetings are, short, and they're not as passionate as the zoning meetings that are held in planning. That's where I'm really afraid somebody is going to get hurt. Whether you like this or not, I am the one that was behind the sign that says, hometown of President Bill Clinton. I don't think that we're going to, whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, or whatever, I don't think we're going to produce another president from the city of Hot Springs. And if we do, good. We can take that one down and say, our new president. But there was a lot of resistance to it. Okay, stop the Corps of Engineers. It is not easy to stop the Corps of Engineers. It actually was stopped by Colonel Fairview. He came to a meeting that I held, and I was the one that chaired it, and he was quite belligerent, which was wonderful. He played right into it. He went on to demean every board of director, and he insulted everyone that was in attendance, the public. That's how we got it approved. Because when this was shown on TV, the people demanded that this action not be taken because it was going to close down Whittington for a few years. Because when they were going to mine all that stuff through West Mountain, it was going to have to be transported through Whittington and probably down Park Avenue. Shortly after, there was a rock slide because of destabilization of the mountain, and a lady was killed in the springy dinghy. Okay, got the agenda meetings televised. They weren't televised before, and also we used to have our city board meetings on Monday night, and the guys gave me a terrible time. In fact, one guy who has since passed away, Ron Treaster, I don't know if you remember this, but he walked off the air because he said, I want to play softball that night. Well, if you want to play softball, go play softball, but when you take the position and the oath to be a city, to be a public representative, you put softball aside. Well, he walked off the air and he was really angry and he threatened everybody that if they passed it, that he would resign. He recanted the next day on the radio, but he lost the election. And he recently passed away, and we were friends after that. I mean, before he passed away. I haven't communed with him since. But I might. I stopped a lot of things that you don't hear about, or things, they call it putting out fires. There was an action by what was his name, Pat Parker. He wanted to sell some real estate. He bought Essex Park. Well, I looked into it, and Essex Park was a Class 1 landfill. And they were going to put a children's park over there. So I got a call from a lady that ran a cafe called Lakeside Cafe, and she gave me a chemical breakdown of everything that had happened in the bake sales. And make a long story short, there was actually what is called a super fund cleanup ordered of, what's it called? It's Stratcor now. But it was Union Carbide. Remember the place in Bhopal? And they don't have a real good record for being people friendly. They're more interested in the bottom line and how much money they make, and if people go with it. I guess, I don't know. I don't think they think about it. They just want to make the money. So we stopped that immediately. But you don't hear about that because that's done quietly. You get all the papers. I submitted it to the governor. He got tired of me submitting stuff. To the Sentinel Record and to the city attorney. And I said, go for it. Because the governor was responsible for this. So it was halted immediately. Okay. The Quapaw House, this has to do with the Math and Science School. Mayor Barron lobbied very hard. I've never seen anybody work as hard to bring the Math and Science School to this city. And a couple of years ago, they were going to place the Quapaw House, a drug and alcohol rehabilitation center, directly behind it. And it was contingent upon a rezoning. So that all got killed. It didn't make the newspapers, but we could have lost, this is before the Living Center was done, we could have lost the Math and Science School. And that would have been a travesty because that is very, very important to this end of town. It's an anchor, and it's something a whole bunch of cities really, really want. And so we were on our own. And this had to be done again behind the scenes. This wasn't a board action. It's a matter of being in touch with what's going on around you and knowing what to do and listening to the people. Okay. I voted, you might be disappointed in me, but I voted no for all of the fees and rates to be raised on your water bill. Because I didn't think it was right, because that is taxation without you getting a vote. Yes, it benefits the city, and I like what they're doing with it. But I couldn't find it in my conscience to support something without the vote of the people. I would have gladly gone out there, like I did with several other issues, and lobbied for it to pass. But to just have a board vote for rates and fees, no way. Wouldn't do it. I got the water tower at Belvedere. They had hardly any water pressure. That was in the newspaper. Okay. There were several of you that worked real hard for the opposition several times that I ran. And I just want to say that it's been a pleasure trying to help you too, because that's what public service is all about. Even if you campaigned against me, it didn't make any difference. And the ones here that did or were planning to, I still would have answered your calls and got whatever it was that you needed fixed. Because again, that's what